Neda believed in love. Not the kind of love people faked for Instagram, filled with staged candlelight dinners and matching outfits. Not the transactional love that had become the norm in Lagos, where affection was measured in credit alerts and designer bags. No, Neda believed in real love. The type that his parents had, where his father would still sneak up behind his mother and tickle her while she stirred a pot of soup, laughing like teenagers. The type that wasn't about who had more money, but who could make the other person smile on the worst of days. Unfortunately, Lagos didn't believe in that kind of love. At 32, Nedu had everything on paper. A stable job as a senior software engineer, a comfortable apartment in Lekki, and a car that didn't break down in the middle of Third Mainland Bridge. He was the kind of man that mothers prayed their daughters would marry, respectful, hardworking, and without any known baby mamas. But there was one problem. Nedu was too naive. His friends often told him, "Guy, you be Magoo for love." And maybe they were right. His heart was too soft, his trust too easy to earn. He loved love, and that made him a target. His first girlfriend, Amaka, had once borrowed 500,000 Nigerian nairas from him to start a business. He never saw the business. He never saw Amaka again. His second, Ife, claimed she loved him deeply, but as soon as she met his boss at a work event, she magically lost feelings for Nedu and found them in the arms of a man with a house in Banana Island. His third, well, Nedu had stopped keeping track after that. But still, he refused to give up on love. And so, one evening, after months of self-imposed solitude, he sat in his apartment, staring at his phone. A new name appeared on his WhatsApp screen, Amaka. A friend had introduced them, saying she was sweet, God-fearing, and not like those Lagos girls. Neda sighed, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Maybe this time would be different. Maybe, just maybe, Amaka would be the one. Neda leaned back on his couch, staring at his phone screen with a small smile. For the past 2 weeks, he and Amaka had been talking nonstop. Their conversations flowed so easily that he found himself looking forward to her messages. She was funny, kind, and surprisingly down-to-earth. Unlike the usual Lagos girls who asked for urgent 2K before even saving his number, Amaka never once hinted at money. Instead, they talked about books, movies, and even childhood memories. Maybe this is it, he thought. Maybe I've finally found a decent girl. Then came the big moment. Nedu, you're such a great guy. We should totally meet in person. He didn't hesitate. Of course. Saturday, 7 p.m.? Perfect. I know just the place. That was his first mistake. Nedu arrived at the restaurant, a cozy but elegant spot on the island. He had dressed well, nothing too flashy, just a nice fitted shirt and tailored pants. Amaka arrived shortly after, and the moment he saw her, he almost forgot how to breathe. She was stunning, even more beautiful than her pictures. She had soft, brown skin, perfectly lined lips, and a confidence that made her even more attractive. Wow, he breathed. You look amazing. Amaka giggled. Thank you. You're not so bad yourself. Neda felt his chest warm with hope. Maybe this time would be different. Then the door opened, and 2 women walked in. Meet my best friends, Bisola and Titi. Amaka announced, grinning. Neda blinked. Oh, hi. The 2 ladies barely greeted him before sliding into the booth. Okay, maybe they're just here to say hello, he thought. Maybe they won't stay long. That was his second mistake. A waiter approached, handing the menus. Before Nedu could even suggest anything, Amaka and her friends dived in. I'll have the grilled salmon with mashed potatoes, Bisola said. And a bottle of red wine, Titi added. Amaka smiled sweetly at him. I hope you don't mind, babe. Neda swallowed. Babe? They hadn't even held hands yet. He tried to stay calm, but the next 30 minutes were a blur of expensive food orders. Lobster, prawns, siya platters, even dessert before the main course. His heart pounded with every additional order. At some point, he glanced at the menu prices and almost choked. 25,000 Nigerian nairas for a steak? His monthly data subscription wasn't even that much. By the time they finished eating, Nedu was sweating. Then the bill arrived. 147,000 Nigerian nairas. Nedu stared at it, his soul leaving his body. He looked up to see Amaka smiling at him, as if nothing was wrong. "Thanks, babe," she said sweetly. "You're so generous." Bisola and Titi were already taking selfies, talking about where they should go next. Nedu cleared his throat. "Excuse me, I need to use the restroom." Then he did the only thing his ancestors would have approved of. He disappeared. After the Amaka disaster, Nedu swore off dating for a while. His friends laughed at him when he narrated the story. "Guy, you for just stand up and tell them, be dangote. Next time, carry them go mama put. Let's see if they'll order grilled salmon there." He ignored their teasing and decided to focus on work. Women, he told himself, could wait. But love had other plans. A chance encounter at the gym. One evening, after months of avoiding relationships, Nedu decided to hit the gym. Not because he was a fitness enthusiast, no, he preferred coding and eating suya, but because his potbelly was starting to announce itself in his fitted shirts. That was when he met her. Tall, curvy, skin like melted chocolate. She moved with effortless grace, her ponytail swinging as she worked out on the treadmill. Nedu wasn't one to approach women at the gym, but when she paused to take a sip of water, he found himself saying, "You look like a pro." She turned, and when she smiled, he forgot what air felt like. "You're funny," she said. "I'm a Desawa." Their conversation flowed easily. They talked about fitness, their favorite foods. She loved umla, he preferred pounded yam, and before he knew it, they had exchanged numbers. Unlike Amaka, Desawa didn't seem materialistic. They spent hours talking about childhood memories, business ideas, even deep topics like personal fears. For the first time in a long while, Nedu thought, maybe I've finally met someone genuine. This time he picked the restaurant, a simple, quiet place where they could talk. When she arrived, his jaw almost hit the table. Gone was the sweet, calm Desawa from the gym. In her place was a woman dressed like she was attending a music video shoot, tight mini dress, dramatic lashes, and a loud chewing gum pop to complete the look. Still, Nedu tried to keep an open mind. Maybe she'd just like to dress up. Then, the waiter arrived. Desawa turned to him and frowned. "Why is the food here so expensive?" "I beg, let's go somewhere else." Before he could respond, she grabbed her bag. "Let's go to that place in Ikeja. I hear their food is cheap and plenty." Nedu blinked. "Ikeja? But we just got here." She rolled her eyes. "I beg, I don't like forming. I want real food, not this posh nonsense." At first, he admired her boldness. Maybe she was just down to earth. At the new restaurant, Desawa ordered 3 plates of food, one for herself, one for later, and one because she just felt like it. Nedu paid. Again. Then, just as he was beginning to accept his fate, the drama started. A waiter accidentally spilled water near their table. Desawa shot to her feet. "Are you mad? Do you know who I am?" The poor boy apologized, but she wasn't having it. Before Nedu could calm her down, she had removed her wig and was shouting, "You think you can embarrass me? I will show you today." A small crowd gathered. Some people started recording. Nedu's soul left his body. He wanted to disappear, teleport, vanish into thin air. Instead, he quietly grabbed his phone, stood up and left. Desawa was too busy arguing to even notice. Back in his apartment, Nedu threw his phone on the couch and sighed deeply. Maybe love wasn't for him. But fate had other plans. Because the next woman he would meet would change his life forever. Nedu drove through the streets of Lagos, gripping the steering wheel tighter than usual. His mind was in turmoil. How do I keep attracting these women? First, Amaka had used him like an ATM machine. Now, Desawa had turned a simple dinner into a live episode of Big Brother Naija. He shook his head. "I need a break from dating." As he approached an intersection, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. His friend Uche was calling. Maybe I should just become a monk, he thought bitterly as he reached for the phone. And then, bam! The impact sent a violent jolt through his body. His head snapped forward, his seatbelt locking in place just in time. His car skidded slightly before coming to a shaky stop. For a second, he sat frozen, hands gripping the wheel, heart pounding. Then, reality set in. He had crashed into another car. And not just any car. A sleek, black Mercedes-AMG G63. His heart nearly stopped. Dear Lord, is this how my life will end? Slowly, he forced himself to look through his windshield, expecting to see a heavily built, angry Lagos big man stepping out to rain curses on him. But when the driver's door opened, his breath caught. A woman stepped out. Not just any woman. She was breathtaking. Even in the dim evening light, her beauty was striking. Tall and elegant, with smooth, caramel-toned skin that seemed to glow under the streetlights. Her fitted gown hugged her curves perfectly, and when she turned to face him, he felt his entire soul leave his body. Then he saw it, a small tribal mark on her left cheek. The contrast was so unexpected, so unusual, that it jarred him. How could someone so classy have such a local mark? Before he could think too deeply about it, she spoke, and her voice, rich, smooth, and refined, wrapped around him like silk. I'm so sorry about that, she said, walking up to his window. Are you okay? She's apologizing? This was new. Lagos drivers didn't apologize, especially rich ones driving cars that cost more than some people's life savings. Still slightly dazed, Nedu stepped out. His poor Toyota looked like it had fought with a lion and lost. He groaned internally. How much will this cost me? She, on the other hand, barely looked at her car. Instead, she kept her gaze on him. What can I do to make amends? She asked sincerely. The ridiculousness of the situation made Nedu laugh bitterly. Well, maybe you could buy me a new car. He was joking, of course, but her response nearly made him faint. Okay. Nedu blinked. Wait. What? Give me your address. I'll send you a new one tomorrow, she said smoothly. He stared at her, waiting for the punchline. Was this a prank? A setup? Which Lagos woman would casually buy a man a car? He decided to play along. He gave her his address, half expecting her to drive off and never call him again. She smiled. I'll see you soon, then. With that, she stepped back into her car and drove off, her luxury vehicle gliding down the road like royalty. Nedu stood there for a long time, staring after her. Who the hell was that woman? Little did he know his life had just changed forever. The next morning, Nedu arrived at work feeling groggy. He hadn't been able to sleep much, replaying last night's collision over and over again in his mind. Who was that woman? Why was she so calm after the accident? And most importantly, was she really going to send him a car? He shook his head, chuckling dryly to himself. Of course not. Maybe it was just her way of ending the conversation politely. No sane person would buy a stranger a car over a simple accident, especially not in Lagos. He was still deep in thought when he heard a commotion outside his office window. Loud gasps, murmurs, then excited shouts. Nedu frowned, pushing his chair back. What's going on? He stepped outside to see a brand new car parked in front of the office building. A sleek, silver Toyota Camry 2024 model, shining like a jewel under the morning sun. A uniformed driver stood beside it, holding a white envelope. People gathered around, whispering and pointing. Nedu felt his heart pound. No way. The driver spotted him, walked over, and handed him the envelope with a respectful bow. For you, sir. Nedu hesitated before taking it. His hands were slightly unsteady as he tore it open. Inside was a simple, elegant note written in smooth cursive handwriting. Now you'll never look down on a Nigerian woman again. Yemi. His head spun. Yemi. So that was her name. The mysterious, breathtaking, ridiculously generous woman. He looked at the car again, then at the note, then back at the driver, who simply nodded. Madam sends her regards. Nedu could barely process it. This had to be a joke. Or a test. Or a trick. But no, the car was real. The people whispering around him were real. The driver, standing with quiet confidence, was real. Nedu ran a hand through his hair. What kind of woman did something like this? More importantly, Why did she do it for him? Later that evening, Nedu paced his living room, his phone in his hand. He had been staring at Yemi's number for the past 20 minutes, debating whether or not to call her. He wasn't sure how to feel. Grateful? Embarrassed? Suspicious? Finally, he took a deep breath and pressed the dial button. The call barely rang twice before she picked up. Nedu, she said, her voice as smooth as silk. I was wondering how long it would take for you to call. He hesitated. You really bought me a car? You sound surprised, because I am surprised. I don't understand why you'd do that for a stranger. Yemi laughed softly. Does a good deed need an explanation? In this Lagos? Nedu scoffed. Definitely. She chuckled again, then said, All right. If it'll make you feel better, let's meet up. Dinner my treat. That way, you can look me in the eyes while you overthink my kindness. Nedu hesitated. Something about Yemi unsettled him. She was beautiful, wealthy, confident. Everything about her screamed high class. And then there was the tribal mark. He hated that he even thought about it, but it was there, standing out against her otherwise flawless beauty. Still, curiosity gnawed at him. All right, he finally said. Where should I meet you? Yemi laughed again, a knowing sound that made his stomach tighten. Don't worry about that. I'll send a car to pick you up. Nedu frowned. That won't be necessary. I can drive myself. She hummed in amusement. Let me guess, you don't want to feel emasculated? Nedu shifted uncomfortably. She had read him too easily. Fine, she said. I'll send you the location. 8 o'clock. Don't be late. The call ended before he could respond. Nedu exhaled, staring at his phone. This woman was something else. And he wasn't sure if that was a good thing. By 7:45 p.m., Nedu was dressed and ready. A tailored navy blue shirt, black trousers, and polished loafers. He stared at his reflection in the mirror, adjusting his cuffs. He looked good. No, he looked expensive. Tonight, he needed to remind this woman that she wasn't the only one with money. His phone buzzed. A message from Yemi. Hope you're on your way. CC Sibi. 8 p.m. sharp. CC Sibi? Nedu's brows furrowed. The name was familiar. Then it hit him. The CC Sibi? The ultra-exclusive fine dining restaurant that was the talk of Lagos? The one that had a 3-month waiting list? The one where only politicians, celebrities, and business moguls dined? He swallowed. What kind of woman casually booked a date at CC Sibi? A very rich one. Nedu clenched his jaw. No problem. He would meet her there. The moment Nedu stepped into CC Sibi, he felt like he had walked into another world. Soft jazz music played in the background. The chandeliers sparkled like diamonds. The air was thick with the scent of aged wine and expensive perfumes. It was the kind of place that made you straighten your posture and check your bank account balance twice. A sharply dressed hostess greeted him with a warm smile. Good evening, sir. You must be Mr. Nedu. He nodded. This way, please. Ms. Yemi is expecting you. He followed her through the grand dining hall, feeling more out of place with every step. This woman must really be testing me, he thought. Then he saw her, Yemi, sitting at a corner table near the floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking the city. She was breathtaking. A red satin dress that hugged her figure, her long legs crossed elegantly, gold earrings, subtle makeup, and that undeniable aura of confidence. And of course, there was the mark, that small tribal scar that sat on the side of her face, the only imperfection in her otherwise divine beauty. For a moment, Nedu almost forgot how to walk. Then she smiled, tilting her head. Are you going to keep staring, or are you going to sit? Nedu cleared his throat, pulled out a chair, and sat. Impressive place, he said casually, pretending not to be fazed. She smirked. I own it. Nedu nearly choked on his own breath. You what? Yemi took a sip of her wine. I own CC Sibi. It's my restaurant. Nedu blinked. She was the owner? The mastermind behind Lagos' most exclusive dining spot? How had he not known this? He had heard the name before, but he had assumed the owner was some middle-aged Yoruba woman, not this. You look surprised, she said, amused. Well, yeah, he admitted. I wasn't expecting a woman. He hesitated. A young woman? She pressed, raising a brow. He let out a breath. Honestly, I just wasn't expecting you. She laughed, a soft, rich sound. You'll get used to it. A waiter arrived, placing a menu in front of him. Nedu glanced at the prices and nearly whistled. This woman no day play. I hope you don't mind, but I ordered for us already, Yemi said. He raised an eyebrow. You ordered for me? I own a restaurant, remember? Trust me, you'll love it. Nedu sat back, studying her. Everything about her was a contradiction. She was beautiful, yet unbothered by superficial beauty standards. She was wealthy, but didn't flaunt it arrogantly. She was direct, confident, and somehow intriguing. But still, there was something about her that unsettled him. The way she carried herself. The way she was so effortlessly in control. And then there was the tribal mark. He wasn't proud of it, but a small part of him struggled with it. For years, he had envisioned the kind of woman he would marry, classy, elegant, and perfect. But Yemi, with all her wealth and poise, had something that wasn't perfect. She seemed to sense his hesitation. You're staring at my mark, she said, her voice unreadable. Nedu froze. She leaned forward slightly, resting her chin on her palm. You don't have to be polite about it. Most men notice it immediately, but they pretend they don't. I wasn't. You were. She smiled knowingly. It's okay. I used to be insecure about it too. Nedu exhaled. Did someone give it to you? My grandmother, Yemi said simply. Traditional rites. My parents were furious, but it was already done. And you never tried to remove it? She shrugged. I could. But why should I? Nedu had no answer to that. The food arrived, and as they ate, their conversation drifted into deeper topics. Business, life, family. Yemi was brilliant, sharp-witted, insightful, and full of unexpected depth. Nedu found himself drawn to her, despite his initial hesitation. By the time the plates were cleared and the dessert arrived, he realized something strange. He was actually enjoying himself. This wasn't like his past dates. Yemi wasn't trying to impress him. She wasn't using him. She wasn't after his money. If anything, she was the one in control. And it terrified him. As they stepped outside, the night air was cool and refreshing. Yemi turned to him with a teasing smile. So, did I pass your test? Nedu scoffed. Test. You've been evaluating me all night, haven't you? He rubbed the back of his neck. I mean, you're a bit different from what I expected. Good. She stepped closer. I like being unpredictable. Then, as if reading his mind, she leaned in slightly and whispered, But I already know your type. Nedu swallowed. My type. She nodded. You like to be in control. You're not used to a woman like me, one who doesn't need you, but wants you anyway. His mouth felt dry. Yemi smiled, stepping back. Good night, Nedu. She turned and walked towards her car, her red dress flowing behind her. Nedu stood there for a long moment, watching as she drove away. His heart pounded. This woman was trouble. And yet, he already knew this wouldn't be their last meeting. Nedu tried to push Yemi out of his mind. It wasn't supposed to be like this. She was everything he had told himself to avoid, too rich, too confident, too much. He wasn't about to be one of those men who lost themselves because of a woman. She'll get bored and move on. That was what he told himself as he lay in bed that night. That was what he told himself when he went to work the next morning. And that was what he told himself every time his phone vibrated and he checked, only to realize it wasn't a message from her. Good. He didn't need distractions. But still something didn't sit right. By the fourth day of silence, he convinced himself that Yemi had probably forgotten about him. Then on the fifth day, something unexpected happened. It was a Friday evening, and Nedu was on another date. This time, he had promised himself to be cautious. No gym girls, no Instagram models, and definitely no women who owned five-star restaurants. He had met Chica through a mutual friend. A simple, soft-spoken woman. She worked in a bank, had a calm demeanor, and seemed like a safe choice. The date started well. They met at a cozy restaurant, had pleasant conversation, and Nedu found himself thinking, maybe normal is good. But then, things took a turn. Halfway through the date, she excused herself to make a phone call. That was when Nedu noticed something strange. A group of rough-looking men entered the restaurant and sat nearby. His instincts kicked in. Something was off. Then he saw it. Chica, standing outside, speaking hurriedly to one of them. A cold chill ran down his spine. This wasn't a date. It was a setup. He grabbed his phone and quickly texted his friend. If anything happens to me, Chica set me up. Then, acting as casually as possible, he got up, left some money on the table, and walked towards the exit. As soon as he stepped outside, the men followed. His heart pounded. He needed to move fast. Before Chica could notice, he slipped into the crowd and disappeared into the street. Only when he was a safe distance away did he finally exhale. That was close. Nedu shook his head in disbelief. Women. Was this what dating had become? As he walked towards his car, shaking off the fear, he promised himself he was done. No more dates. No more games. Then, just as he reached his car, he saw her. Yemi. Standing by the entrance of a boutique, looking effortlessly stunning in a fitted jumpsuit. Their eyes met, and she smiled. Nedu hesitated. Of all the people to run into tonight, it had to be her. Yemi, he said cautiously, forcing a smile. Small world. She stepped closer, amusement dancing in her eyes. I thought you were avoiding me. Nedu chuckled. Avoid you? No, I've just been busy. Yemi leaned in slightly, her voice teasing but firm. You're terrible at hiding things, Nedu. But don't worry, I find that adorable. He swallowed. This woman was something else. Before he could respond, she turned and started walking away, tossing a casual, see you soon, over her shoulder. Nedu stood there, completely thrown off. Who exactly was chasing who here? And why did he suddenly feel like he was the one being pursued? Nedu had never been pursued before. Not like this. Sure, he had experienced women who were interested in him, at least in his money. But this was different. Yemi wasn't chasing him out of desperation or greed. She was doing it because she wanted him. And that realization made his chest tighten in ways he didn't understand. The next morning it started. A knock on his apartment door woke him up. Groggy and still half asleep, he dragged himself out of bed and opened the door to find a delivery man holding a sleek white box with a black ribbon. For Mr. Nedu, the man said with a polite nod. Nedu took the box cautiously. Who sent this? The delivery man grinned. She said you'd know. Nedu didn't have to ask who she was. After tipping the man, he shut the door and carried the box to his table. He hesitated for a moment before opening it. Inside was a neatly folded designer shirt. Expensive. And on top of it, a note written in delicate cursive. Since you won't let me buy you a car, at least wear something nice while pretending you don't like me. Yemi. Nedu exhaled sharply. This woman. He shook his head, resisting the urge to smile, and placed the shirt aside. He wasn't going to fall for this. Not today. By afternoon, his phone buzzed with a message. Yemi, lunch? Don't say no, I hate rejection. Nedu stared at the screen, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. He should say no. He would say no. But somehow, he found himself typing. Nedu, fine. Where? A response came instantly. Yemi, pick you up at 2. Don't argue. Nedu sight. This woman didn't even give him a chance to resist. At exactly 2 p.m., a sleek black Porsche pulled up in front of his office. His colleagues peeked through the windows, whispering excitedly. Who is that? One of them asked. Another whistled. Nedu, is that your babe? Nedu groaned. This was exactly why he had wanted to avoid her. Yemi wasn't just rich. She was dramatic. He stepped outside, and the driver's window rolled down, revealing her stunning face. Hop in, she said smoothly. Why are you picking me up like a sugar mummy? He muttered, sliding into the passenger seat. Yemi laughed. Who says I'm not? He shot her a look, but she only smirked. shifting the car into gear. As they drove off, Nedu couldn't ignore the glances people threw their way. He felt like a small-town boy being dragged into a world too big for him. But when Yemi started talking, he forgot all of that. She wasn't just beautiful, she was brilliant. She spoke about business with a passion that was almost hypnotic. She told stories about her struggles, about how people doubted a woman could own a 5-star restaurant empire. And the more she spoke, the more Nedu found himself forgetting about the tribal mark he once thought was a turn-off. She wasn't just rich. She wasn't just beautiful. She was Yemi. And that realization scared him more than anything else. After lunch, Yemi drove him back to his office. Just as he was about to step out, she stopped him. Nedu, she said softly. He turned to face her. I know you're scared, she continued. I know you think I'm too rich, too much, too different. He opened his mouth to argue, but she cut him off. It's okay, she said, smiling. I like a challenge. Nedu stared at her, speechless. Then she leaned in and whispered, Get ready to be loved, Nedu. I don't give up easily. Before he could respond, she winked and drove off, leaving him standing there, completely stunned. And for the first time in a long time, Nedu wondered if maybe, just maybe, love had finally found him. Nedu had never experienced love like this before. It was relentless. It was intentional. It was terrifying. Yemi didn't chase him the way desperate women chase men for money. She didn't flatter him unnecessarily or act like she was doing him a favor. Instead, she simply showed up, every day, in ways so subtle yet undeniable that he found himself thinking about her even when he didn't want to. Good morning, Nedu. It started with small things. A message every morning. Yemi. Good morning, Nedu. I hope today is kind to you. Not how was your night? Like the shallow greetings he was used to from women who didn't really care. Not send me transport like the ones who only saw him as an ATM. No. She wished him well. She hoped for his happiness. And she never once asked for anything in return. At first, he ignored the messages. Then he started responding with a simple, you too. By the end of the week, he found himself checking his phone every morning, expecting her message. And when, one morning, it didn't come, he felt something disturbingly close to disappointment. One afternoon, while Nedu was drowning in a mountain of tasks at work, a delivery arrived at his office. A small, elegantly wrapped package with a note. He frowned, opening it cautiously. Inside, he found a bottle of pure honey and another note in Yemi's delicate handwriting. Since you're always stressed, take a spoonful before bed. Sweet dreams, Nedu. Yemi. Nedu exhaled sharply. This woman. What was she doing to him? The date he didn't want to go on. Nedu, let's have dinner on Friday. That was all Yemi had texted him on Wednesday. No pleading, no persuasion. Just a simple invitation. And for the life of him, he didn't know why he agreed. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the way she never tried to force him. Or maybe it was something he wasn't ready to admit. Either way, Friday came, and he found himself seated in the most stunning rooftop restaurant he had ever seen. He had expected Yemi to show up in something loud and flashy. But when she walked in, she wore a simple emerald green dress that hugged her body just enough to be elegant, but not boastful. And when she smiled at him, soft, confident, knowing, his throat went dry. You came, she said as she took her seat across from him. You knew I would, he muttered, looking away. She chuckled. I was 90% sure. The other 10% was scared you'd run away. Nedu looked at her and sighed. Yemi, why are you doing this? She tilted her head. Doing what? This. Me. He gestured vaguely between them. You could have any man. A rich one. A confident one. Someone who won't. Someone who won't be scared of me, she finished for him. He swallowed hard. Yes. Yemi leaned forward, resting her chin on her hand. Nedu, she said softly, do you think I don't know my worth? That I don't know how men look at me, with desire but also fear? He said nothing. Most men either want to own me or run away from me, she continued. But you just want to understand me. She smiled. And I like that. Nedu exhaled. You're not making this easy for me, Yemi.
She grinned.
Good. They ate. They talked. And for the first time, Nedu let himself enjoy her company without the weight of his own insecurities. Maybe, just maybe, this wasn't so bad. Maybe, just maybe, he was falling. A moment of weakness. That night, as she drove him home, Nedu found himself watching her closely. She wasn't just confident. She was kind. She was warm. And even though he still saw the small tribal mark on her cheek, it no longer bothered him. It was just a part of her. When she pulled up in front of his apartment, he hesitated before getting out. Yemi, he said, voice quiet. She turned to him. He didn't know what he wanted to say. Maybe thank you. Maybe I'm sorry for being difficult. Maybe I think I might be in trouble with you. But all he managed was good night. She smiled knowingly. Good night, Nedu. And as she drove away, he stood there, watching her go, his heart pounding against his ribs. Yemi was right. She was a challenge. And Nedu was no longer sure he wanted to resist. Nedu had always believed that love was something that happened to him. Like an accident. Like fate. Like the unfortunate series of events that had led him to be used, mocked, and nearly robbed by the women in his past. But Yemi was rewriting everything he thought he knew. She wasn't just loving him. She was choosing him. Every single day. And that terrified him. Nedu knew he was losing the battle. He was beginning to think about her too much. His mornings didn't feel right until he saw her usual text. His nights felt empty when he wasn't replaying their conversations. He needed space. So, like the emotionally confused man that he was, he did what most men did when they were scared. He pulled away. He stopped responding to her texts. He canceled their next dinner plan. And when she called, he let it ring. He told himself it was for the best. That if he ignored her long enough, she would move on. But deep inside, he knew Yemi wasn't like the others. And she wasn't going to let him go so easily. You can't escape me, Nedu. The confrontation came on a Saturday morning. Nedu had just stepped out of his apartment, yawning, when he saw a familiar figure leaning against his car. Dressed in simple jeans and a white shirt, arms crossed, an amused smile playing on her lips. Yemi. His stomach dropped. What are you doing here? She shrugged. You ignored my calls. I got curious. He sighed. Yemi, Don't lie. She cut in, her tone calm but firm. You like me, Nedu. I see it. I feel it. He opened his mouth, but she raised a hand. Let me finish. Taking a slow step toward him, she tilted her head. You're scared because you've been hurt before. You think I'll wake up one day and decide you're not good enough. That I'll look at your bank account, your job, and decide you don't measure up. His jaw tightened. But Nedu, she continued softer now, I don't love you for what you have. I love you for who you are. The words hit him like a punch to the chest. She what? She must have seen the panic in his eyes because she chuckled. Relax, I know you're not ready to hear that yet. She leaned in slightly, lowering her voice. But I'll wait, and I'll keep showing you, until you believe it. Then, with a small wink, she turned and walked away, leaving him standing there, shaken. The next week was torture. Nedu tried to focus on work, but he was restless, unsettled. He couldn't stop thinking about Yemi's words. I love you for who you are. No woman had ever said that to him before. And the worst part? He believed her. One evening, as he lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, he grabbed his phone and finally did what he had been resisting for days. He called her. She picked up on the first ring. Nedu, she said, and he could hear the smile in her voice. He swallowed hard. I think I'm ready to stop running. Silence. Then, softly, good. And just like that, the walls he had built around his heart began to crumble. For the first time, Nedu let himself hope. Maybe, just maybe, love wasn't an accident. Maybe it was a choice. And this time, he was choosing her too. Nedu had always thought that love was something that happened to a man. That it sneaked up on him when he least expected it, like an unexpected bill or bad weather. But now, sitting across from Yemi at a candlelit restaurant, Watching the way she effortlessly commanded a room with her presence, he realized something. Love wasn't just something that happened. It was something you let happen. And, finally, he was letting it. This time, Nedu didn't hesitate when Yemi asked him to dinner. She had chosen a restaurant he was comfortable in. Nothing too extravagant. Nothing that made him feel small. Just a quiet, intimate space where they could talk. When she arrived, he almost forgot how to breathe. A simple navy blue dress. Hair pulled back in an elegant bun. Gold earrings that glowed under the soft restaurant lights. She sat down, giving him that soft, knowing smile. You look like a man who just realized something important. He chuckled. Maybe I have. Care to share? He hesitated, then leaned forward slightly. I think I've been a coward. She raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. He exhaled. I was so focused on all the reasons why we wouldn't work, your wealth, your confidence, your tribal mark. He felt ridiculous even saying it now. But the truth is, Yemi, I was just scared. Scared that if I let myself love you, I wouldn't be enough. For a moment, she said nothing. Then softly, and now? His heart pounded. He reached across the table, taking her hand in his. Now, I think I'd be a fool to let you go. Her fingers tightened around his. Nedu, she said, her voice warm and teasing. It took you long enough. He laughed, and just like that, the weight in his chest lifted. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't running. But if he thought that meant Yemi would stop her bold pursuit of him, he was wrong. She still sent him random gifts, little things that made him smile. A book she thought he'd like. A handwritten note tucked into his work bag. His favorite food delivered to his office. She still called him every morning, her voice soft with sleep. Just checking in on my favorite person. And when he tried to return the favor, when he sent her flowers or bought her gifts, she only smiled and said, I appreciate this, but remember, I'm the one wooing you. He had never met a woman like her. And now, he was completely, hopelessly, deliberately falling in love. One evening, as they sat on a park bench, watching the Abuja skyline glow in the distance, Yemi turned to him. Do you believe in fate? Nedu thought for a moment. I used to think love was fate. That had just happened. But now I think love is a choice. She smiled. Good answer. Then, after a pause, she added, So, when are we getting married? Nedu nearly choked on his drink. What? She laughed. Oh, come on. You didn't think I'd wait for you to propose, did you? His heart pounded. Was she joking? Was she serious? Yemi only smiled, reaching out to straighten his collar. Relax, Nedu. I'm just giving you something to think about. And with that, she stood up, brushing imaginary dust off her dress. I'll see you tomorrow. Then she walked away, leaving him sitting there, stunned. Nedu, when are we getting married? For the first time, the question didn't scare him. It excited him. Nedu spent the next few days thinking about what Yemi had said. When are we getting married? She had dropped the question so casually, like she was asking about the weather, but it had shaken him to his core. Not because he didn't want to marry her, but because somewhere deep inside he realized he did. He wanted to wake up to her voice every morning, not just over the phone, but in their home. He wanted to watch her fill a space with her warmth and laughter. He wanted a lifetime of her boldness, her kindness, and her love. But the fear still lingered. Would I be enough? Even now, with all she had done to prove she wanted him, not his status or success, the insecurity gnawed at him. Then one morning, he woke up to a simple message from Yemi. Love in every word, love in every action. But love is also a decision. What will yours be? Nedu stared at the words for a long time, then exhaled deeply. It was time. If there was one thing he had learned from Yemi, it was that love required effort. And if she had spent all this time wooing him, then it was only right he finally stepped up. So he planned something special. A dinner at her favorite restaurant, but this time, he made the reservations. He made sure everything was perfect, her favorite wine, soft candlelight, and a private table away from the crowd. When she arrived, looking effortlessly breathtaking in a simple white dress, he felt his heart race. She raised an eyebrow. What's all this? He smiled. My turn. She laughed, sitting down. I'm listening. Throughout the meal, he took his time, savoring every moment, every glance, every soft smile she gave him. He realized he had never been happier than in these moments with her. As the night drew to an end, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Yemi's eyes widened slightly, but she said nothing. He opened it, revealing a delicate gold ring. Not flashy, not extravagant, but simple and timeless, just like the love they had built. Nedu took a deep breath. You once asked me when we're getting married, he said, voice steady, but filled with emotion. I was afraid of the answer then, afraid of not being enough. But I know now that love isn't about measuring up. It's about choosing each other every day. He looked into her eyes, holding her gaze. So, Yemi, will you choose me? Today, tomorrow, and for every day after? For the first time since he had met her, Yemi was speechless. Then, slowly, a smile spread across her face, soft and radiant. She reached out, cupping his face gently. Nedu, she whispered, I chose you a long time ago. And with that, she took the ring and slid it onto her finger, sealing the promise between them. The restaurant erupted in applause, but Nedu barely heard it. All he could see, all he could feel, was her. Yemi, the woman who had taught him that love wasn't just a word, but an action, a choice, a promise. And now, he was ready to make that promise forever. The end.